So hello viewers. So today we are going to discuss about agriculture. So we are going to introduce agriculture. So agriculture, before we do some introduction, so we have to realize this, that back in the days, start with an early man. So early man, long in the days, they divide themselves in various groups. So in those groups, we had the fruit gatherers, and then we have the hunters. So the hunters, their main work was to trap, kill the animal, the birds, and then the gatherers, their main work in the society was to collect fruits and the seeds in the community. So after understanding the historical background of agriculture, so we have to understand that agriculture was derived from two Latin words. So where we have ager, and then the second Latin word we have cultura. So these are the two Latin words where the term agriculture originate. So ager means field. So in Latin, ager means field. And then cultura in Latin means cultivation. So when you combine ager and cultura, we get the definition of agriculture as field cultivation. So we have the definition. So the origin definition of agriculture based on the Latin names, we get field cultivation. So this is the earliest definition of agriculture based on the two Latin words. But as the times goes by, we realize that the early man, he come up with the ideas of taming the animals or process of domesticating the animals. So the moment human being introduce domestication, where it is the process by which plants and animals are fully dependent on human being, we get the term domestication. So the moment we introduce domestication of livestock, the definition of agriculture changed to as an art and science of livestock and crop production. So the definition of agriculture, the current definition of agriculture is an art and science of livestock production and crop production. So when an early man started to domesticate livestock, so we realize the original definition of agriculture changes from field of cultivation to agriculture as an art and science of livestock production and crop production. So after realizing so we have those activities that shows agriculture is an art, and then we have those activities that shows agriculture is a science. So we have to understand what is an art before we discuss activities that shows agriculture is a science. So art involves use of hand, use of learned skilled, and performing them manually. So those skills that you gain when you learn and then you perform them manually, it is termed as art. So in agriculture, those activities that shows agriculture is an art. So the first one, we have tilling of the land. So that act, when we till the land, it shows an art. So when you talk about tilling, tilling is the excavation of the land surface. So in future we are going to discuss various ways to till the land. So we can have minimum tillage. We can talk about zero tillage. And then we can talk about convention tillage. But that we are going to discuss in future. Another activity that shows agriculture is an art. We have construction of farm structure. So construction of farm structure. So in agriculture, so when you talk about that act of constructing various farm structures like dairy shed, like calf pen, shows that agriculture is an art. Another activity that shows agriculture is an art, we talk about measuring of distance. Measuring of distance. So learners, when you measure the distance of your land either during planting, so that act shows that agriculture is an art. Another activity that shows agriculture is an art, we talk about machine operation. So learners, when you talk about machine operation. So in the farm, learners, we can have various machines. So when you drive that tractor, when you use that tractor to plow the field, it shows that agriculture is an art. So that is an activity that shows agriculture is an art. And then we have harvesting of crop. That is another activity. So we talk about harvesting of crops. So harvesting, when you harvest crops, we have various ways in which you can harvest your crops in the farm. Learners, what are those ways you can harvest your crops? So now when you go to areas like Kericho, you can have tea. So that act of plucking tea shows agriculture is an art. It's one method of harvesting crop. So harvesting of crop is another activity that shows agriculture is an art. So we can continue. So we have another activity that shows agriculture is an art. So we can talk about feeding and handling of livestock. So in the farm, how do you feed? So another activity that shows agriculture is an art. We talk about feeding and handling of livestock. So in agriculture, so how do you feed your livestock? So by use of various types of feeds. So that shows agriculture is an art. And then we talk about handling. How do you handle your animals in the farm? So you can handle your animals in a humane way or in an inhumane way. So when you talk about humane way of handling livestock in your farm, that activity shows agriculture is an art. Previously we defined art. Art, we say that these are it involves use of learned skill, and then that skill that you have learned, you perform it manually. So when you talk about manually, it is that act where you use what? Hand to perform certain task after you have gained some knowledge. So another activity that shows agriculture is an art, we talk about marketing. Marketing of agricultural produce. So learners, so another activity that shows agriculture is an art, we talk about marketing. How do you marketize your produce from the farm to the consumer? So that activity, when you're conducting, that activity shows that agriculture is an art. So we talk about marketing. So you can marketize your goods using various platforms. So you can sell them to the market, you can sell them online. So that act shows agriculture is an art. So from the definition, we are able to understand the one aspect of agriculture. So agriculture as an art. So those activities that shows agriculture is an art. And then the other aspect of agriculture, we have science. What is the scientific aspect of agriculture? So we have to understand science. So agriculture as a science. So those activities that shows agriculture is a science. So we have science. So learners, what is science? So just a recap, what is science? So in agriculture, before we discuss those activities that shows agriculture is a science. So science, it involves experimentation and application of scientific knowledge. So when you talk about those activities that orient the experimentation aspect and application of the scientific knowledge, they are fall under science. So we have those activities where we can apply science in agriculture. So the first area where we can apply science, so the activity that shows agriculture is a science, we have pedology. So the first activity in agriculture that shows agriculture is science, we have pedology. So learners, so don't fear this long term. So pedology, another term for pedology, we talk about what? Soil science. So that is the first activity that shows agriculture is science. So what do we talk about pedology or soil science? So soil science, it is the study of soil. So learners, so when you talk about pedology, pedology means it is the study of soil. So through pedology, learners, we are going to understand how soil is being formed. And then through pedology still, we are going to discuss the structure of various types of soil, the physical properties of soil, and the chemical properties of soil. So through pedology, we are going to study soil in wide aspect. Another activity that shows agriculture is science, we have crop pathology. So the word pathology. So what is pathology? Pathology, it is the study. So learners, pathology, it is the study of crop diseases. So learners, what is crop pathology? Crop pathology, it is the study of crop diseases. So crop diseases. So through crop pathology, we are going to understand what are those types of diseases. So we have classification of various diseases that may attack our crops. So we can have fungal diseases, we can have bacterial diseases, we can have fungi diseases. So under pathology, we are going to understand the significance or the impact of crop diseases in our economy. So through crop pathology. So another activity that shows agriculture is a science. We have entomology. Entomology. So this is another discipline that shows agriculture is a science. When you talk about entomology, what is entomology? So entomology, it is the study of insect and their control. So entomology is the study of insect and their control. So through entomology, we are going to discuss what the structure of the insect, the morphology of the insect, and then the effects of insect in our agriculture, and then how to control this insect. So another activity that shows agriculture is science, we have agricultural engineering. Agricultural engineering. So learners, agricultural engineering. So agricultural engineering is another activity that shows agriculture is a science. When you talk about engineering, what is so special about agricultural engineering? So in agricultural engineering, we are going to understand how do we conserve water, how do we conserve our soil, and the maintenance of farm power. So we talk about soil and water conservation. So in agricultural engineering, we are going to discuss about soil and water conservation. So through agricultural engineering, we are going to discuss how we can conserve our soil, either from degradation or from soil erosion, either by construction of gabions. So that fall under agricultural engineering, because you need to have a scientific knowledge based on engineering so that you can come up with structures that are going to conserve both soil and water. And then another one, you talk about farm power. So farm power. So how do we generate energy in our farm? So when you have that engineering knowledge based on agriculture, we are going to discuss how you can handle various farm power machines. So in order to generate power. And then lastly, and the last aspect, activity that shows agriculture is science. We talk about genetics. So learners, what is genetics? So genetics, it is the study of inheritance and variation. So learners, genetics, it is the study of inheritance and variation. So genetics, the study of inheritance. When you talk about inheritance, there are those characteristics that are passed from the parents to the offspring. So that act is called the inheritance. So through genetics, where do we apply genetics in agriculture? So it is going to play a good role when you talk about plant and animal breeding. So in order to have bumper harvest, in order to get rid of certain inherited diseases, either from the parent to the offspring, we are going to apply the knowledge of genetics. So mostly we are going to apply it on planting. So we are talking about plant and animal. So areas where we can apply genetics, we talk about plants and animal breeding. So what do we mean by the term breeding? Breeding, it is that process where you allow the selected male and female gametes of good characteristics to fuse, and then you allow them to become the parent of the next generation. So when you talk about plant and animal breeding, we are going to apply the knowledge of genetics. So learners, so the activities that shows agriculture is science. We have pedology. So pedology we have defined as the study of soil. And then another one we have crop pathology. So crop pathology we have defined as the study of crop diseases. And then we have entomology. So entomology, it is the study of insects and their control. And then we have agricultural engineering. So and then lastly we have genetics. So those are the activities that shows agriculture is science. So at least we have understand when you define agriculture as an art, you are able to understand what is art. And then those activities that shows agriculture is an art. And then when you talk about science, at least we have discussed what are those activities that you're going to carry out in the farm that are going to show agriculture. So activity that shows agriculture as a science. So when you define agriculture as an art and science of livestock production and crop production, by doing that, you haven't get the full aspect or the full definition of agriculture. So at least you understand what art, at least you understand science. But what do we mean by the term production? So whenever you combine this word, you can come up with a correct definition of agriculture. So you're going to understand agriculture in a broad term. So what do we mean by the term production? Before we discuss, what are those livestock production activities? What are those crop production activities? So that you have bumper harvest. So we define agriculture in a broad term. So we have to understand what is production. So learners, what is production when you want to define agriculture? So learners, production. So production, these are activities that increase the quality and quantity of something. When you talk about production, these are what? Activities that does what? That increase the quality and the quantity of something. So when you talk about crop production activities, crop production activities, in order to have crops that are of high quality and more quantity, because by the end of the day, when you talk about agriculture, it plays a big role in our economy. So like in our country, we are facing one of the greatest problems. When you talk about the Big Four agenda, you have to apply agriculture when you talk about food insecurity. So in crop production, so those activities that are going to improve the quality and the quantity of our crops in our farm. So number one, we talk about, so they include the following. So number one, when we talk about land preparation. So how do you prepare your land? So in order to have bumper harvest, in order to improve quality of a certain crop. Another activity that is going to improve our crops in the farm, we talk about planting. So in the future, we are going to understand what is planting. So learners, so planting, when you meet in future, so planting can be defined as it is the placement of planting materials on the ground or on the soil so as to regenerate into a new plant. So that is another activity that falls under crop production. We have another one, another activity that fall under crop production. We have fertilizer and manure application. So through agriculture, we are going to discuss various ways in which you can apply fertilizer. So method of fertilizer application. Either you can do side dressing. Okay? So we are going to discuss various methods of place fertilizer application. So that is another activity that is going to improve the quality and the quantity of our crops in the farm. And then another activity, we talk about weeding. So weeding, it is the removal of unwanted plants in our farm. So that is defined as weeding. And then how do we control pest? So pest control. So that is another activity. When you talk about pest, so learners, what is a pest? A pest is just an animal, okay, that can cause injury or can cause damage to your crop or can introduce the pathogen to your plant. So when you talk about crop production, in order to have crops that are of high quality, so you need to understand ways of controlling pests in your farm. So like application of pesticides. And then another one, we talk about disease control. So in order to have crops that are of high quality, so you have to understand various ways in which you can control disease in your farm. So first you have to identify which type of disease have attacked your crop. And then after identifying that disease, you have to control that disease. And then lastly, we have harvesting. So learners, so these are the activities in crop production that you're going to carry out in your farm in order to improve the quality and the quantity of your crops. You talk about land preparation, you talk about planting, you talk about fertilizer and manure application, we talk about weeding, pest control, disease control, and harvesting. So by doing this, we are able to define agriculture. So agriculture is an art and science of livestock production and crop production. So learners, so this is an assignment. So you have to define. So define the term agriculture. So write somewhere, define the term agriculture. And then another question we have, outline 3 activities that shows agriculture is an art. So during your free time, so you have to at least outline those activities that shows agriculture is an art. So I'm really thankful for your time. So we may meet next time. So thank you.